There was a time when Sarah Gilbert felt like part of everyone's living room. She wasn't just the sharp-tongued kid on Roseanne, she was the reason that show had a heartbeat. People watched her grow up on screen and watched her turn Darlene Conner into one of the most loved, most relatable characters in TV history. And she didn't stop there. She went on to create The Talk, collect major recognition, and prove she had far more range than the sarcastic teenager America thought they knew. But here's the part most people never see. Behind all the applause and the achievements, Sarah was carrying things that never made the headlines. The kind of private battles that don't trend online. The kind of emotional storms that a lot of fans still know nothing about. Now at 50, her life looks nothing like the fame-soaked path people expected. So, what's really going on with Sarah Gilbert? Join us as we get into all the heartbreaking details, the hidden life of Sarah Gilbert, what fame never showed us. There's something almost surreal about tracing Sarah Gilbert back to the very beginning, long before the fame, before the Emmy recognition, before the kind of spotlight that can swallow a person whole. She was born Sarah Rebecca Abeles in Santa Monica, into a family where storytelling wasn't just a job, it was in the blood. Her mother, Barbara Cowan, and her father, Harold Abeles, came from a deeply rooted Jewish background, and her maternal grandfather was Harry Crane, the mind behind The Honeymooners. Creativity ran through that family like electricity. But Sarah's family tree wasn't simple. She grew up surrounded by older half-siblings, adopted siblings, and the kind of closeness that can either confuse a child or shape them. Her adopted siblings from her mother's side, Melissa Gilbert and Jonathan Gilbert, were already household names thanks to Little House on the Prairie. By 1984, she chose to take the name Gilbert from Paul Gilbert, her mother's first husband, and the name stuck. It became her identity and eventually her legacy. She also carried two more siblings on her father's side, Patrice and Joseph, giving her a sprawling, complicated family web that quietly shaped the tough exterior fans would later admire. What people often forget is that Sarah wasn't just naturally sharp or introspective. She was educated, intentional, and disciplined. She graduated from Yale University in 1997 with honors, majoring in art with a focus on photography. While other young stars often spiraled under the pressure of balancing fame and adolescence, Sarah somehow managed to juggle college lectures and sitcom tapings, a feat that even seasoned adults would struggle with. Her career had roots way deeper than people realize. After a few early TV movies and even a Kool-Aid commercial, she stepped into history at just 13. Landing the role of Darlene Conner on Roseanne changed everything. She wasn't written to be the heart of the show, but that's exactly what she became. Viewers saw a sarcastic kid who somehow still felt vulnerable, painfully real, and familiar. She stayed with the show for all 9 seasons, from 1988 to 1997, and even wrote the story for a 4th season episode, Don't Make Me Over. Her impact was so essential that producers literally rearranged the entire production schedule so she could study at Yale, shooting her scenes remotely from New York because losing her wasn't an option. And when Roseanne ended, she didn't evaporate like most childhood stars. She slid into a long list of roles: The Simpsons, 24, Will and Grace, Law and Order SVU, and Private Practice. She spent 3 seasons as the brilliantly sarcastic medical student Jane Figler on ER, proving she could hold her own in a more dramatic world. Then came the mid-2000s. She landed a regular role in the short-lived sitcom Twins, appeared on The Class, and then stepped into one of her most beloved later roles, Leslie Winkle on The Big Bang Theory. The universe seemed to enjoy the twist. She was once again opposite Johnny Galecki, just like when they played teenage loves on Roseanne. She joined the main cast briefly and gave the show exactly the kind of energy only she could bring. But by 2009, the writers admitted they didn't know how to keep writing her full-time. It wasn't her talent. It was simply Hollywood doing what Hollywood does, dropping storylines when they don't fit the blueprint. But her real second act didn't happen on a sitcom set. It happened on daytime television. In 2010, The Talk premiered, a show she didn't just co-host but created. It was bold, it was personal, and it was hers. She molded it into something that earned her a Daytime Emmy in 2016. But while Gilbert succeeded in her career, the same cannot be said about her love life. The truth behind Sarah Gilbert's love life. For years, people saw Sarah Gilbert as the sharp girl on screen who always knew exactly who she was. But the real story of her personal life, the part she tried to handle in private while growing up in front of millions, was far more emotional, far more complicated, and far more revealing than anyone guessed. It started when she was still a teenager on Roseanne. She and Johnny Galecki, who played her on-screen boyfriend and later her on-screen husband, began dating off-camera. At the time, she had a crush on him. He'd come over, they'd make out, and then something she didn't understand yet would hit her hard. A sadness she couldn't explain. Johnny thought it was about him. It wasn't. She just didn't have the words yet. Years later, on The Talk, when the co-hosts were opening up about personal secrets, Sarah decided to reveal the truth. Those moments with Johnny were the first time she realized she was a lesbian. She said she cared about him, but something inside her kept pulling her into a different reality she wasn't ready to face. And instead of getting offended or dramatic, Johnny proved exactly who he was. He protected her. He kept her confidence for years. Even when she began dating a woman in the public eye, someone much older, someone whose name alone could have started gossip, Johnny stayed silent. Not even people on the Roseanne set knew. Sarah remembered being terrified at the time. Terrified that if her truth came out, everything she'd worked for would collapse. Terrified that she'd never be allowed to play straight characters again. Terrified of losing the one thing she'd built since she was 13. But when she told Johnny she planned to speak publicly about her sexuality, he didn't hesitate. He told her he loved her, that he was proud of her, that he supported her. He even offered to sit beside her, hold her hand, and be there while she spoke her truth. It was a moment that showed the real connection between them, a bond that didn't need romance to survive. By the early 2000s, Sarah was in a long-term relationship with TV producer Allison Adler. They were together for nearly a decade, raising 2 kids, Levi, born in 2004, and Sawyer, born in 2007. It was a real family, built quietly over years of stability and teamwork. When the relationship ended around 2011, it wasn't loud or messy. They shared custody, stayed civil, and kept the focus on their kids. Around the same time, Sarah was ready to speak openly about her sexuality. She confirmed she was a lesbian, not as an announcement for attention, but simply as a fact she no longer wanted to hide. And then came Linda Perry, the singer, the songwriter, and the creative force behind some of the biggest songs of the early 2000s. Their connection moved fast. They began dating in 2011, married in 2014, and welcomed a son, Rhodes, in 2015. For a while, it seemed steady. It seemed like the next chapter she'd been waiting for. But by 2019, things began coming apart. Sarah filed for legal separation, citing irreconcilable differences. The date of separation was listed as August 2019, even though they remained legally married while living apart. They agreed on joint custody, split responsibilities evenly, and waived any form of spousal support. It wasn't a breakup full of bitterness, just 2 people realizing their marriage couldn't keep going the way it was. By 2021, their legal separation was official, and in 2024, the divorce was finalized. They kept their parenting structure intact. They were required to communicate about Rhodes' well-being, his health, his schooling, and all the decisions that matter when a kid is watching 2 parents rebuild their lives separately. Linda Perry didn't lash out or point fingers. Instead, she told people that everything in life comes with a purpose. She explained she was still on her own journey, that whatever she and Sarah shared wasn't over. It had simply changed. She talked about love not as a possession, but as something that evolves. She said she adored Sarah, that raising their son together was still part of a story that would continue in a different way. Looking at all of this, the early confusion, the fear about her career, the relationships that built her, the ones that ended, and the ones that transformed, Sarah Gilbert's personal life has never been the simple tale people assumed. It's been layered, emotional, and painfully human. Long before the divorce with Linda Perry would be finalized in 2024, Sarah was already navigating another storm, one that played out not in courtrooms but on a soundstage. The Roseanne reboot, Meltdown. What really went down between Sarah Gilbert and Roseanne Barr. By the time Roseanne was picked up for a reboot in 2017, fans were buzzing with excitement, networks were confident, and the cast thought they were stepping back into something familiar. But behind the scenes, it didn't take long for everyone to realize they weren't walking into nostalgia, they were walking into a storm. At the center of it stood two women who had once played mother and daughter, now clashing in ways no one expected: Sara Gilbert and Roseanne Barr. Sarah returned wearing two hats, stepping back into Darlene Conner and serving as an executive producer. She carried more responsibility, more say, and more expectations than ever. But according to those on set, the tension began the moment work started. Roseanne Barr, always known for doing things her own way, didn't pull back. If anything, she leaned in harder. Insiders said Sarah struggled with Roseanne's habit of taking control. They weren't just disagreeing, they were locking horns, especially over the political content Roseanne wanted in the scripts. Roseanne, vocal about her support for Donald Trump, wanted the show to reflect her views. Sarah and the rest of the cast were unwilling to turn the reboot into a political battlefield. Everyone remembered the chaos of the original run, the mood swings, the unpredictability, the arguments. They had survived it once. They weren't sure they could do it again. Yet even with all the friction, the series got picked up for a second season before the first one even finished airing. On paper, it looked like a win. Behind closed doors, people held their breath, wondering how long things could stay steady. Then came the tweet. In the early hours of May 29, 2018, Roseanne Barr posted a string of messages targeting Valerie Jarrett and repeating insults about George Soros. One of the tweets implied political conspiracies involving Jarrett, while another suggested extreme, unfair control by Soros over events in the country. The tweets spread fast. They were offensive, jarring, and impossible to ignore. Roseanne deleted them and apologized. But the damage was instant. Sarah Gilbert responded publicly, calling the remarks unacceptable and making it clear the cast did not stand by them. She wasn't trying to attack Roseanne, she was trying to protect the people working on the show, the people who would be blamed for something they had no control over. But her statement lit a fuse. Within 30 minutes of Sarah Gilbert's response, ABC announced the cancellation of Roseanne. What followed turned a professional implosion into something painfully personal. Roseanne gave an unfiltered interview to The Washington Post, pointing hands directly at Sarah. She claimed Sarah's reaction ruined her career. She claimed the cancellation was Sarah's fault. She even said Sarah wouldn't stop until she consumed her liver with a fine Chianti. It wasn't humor. It wasn't satire. It was raw bitterness spilling out in every direction. Meanwhile, ABC executives had already admitted that Roseanne's tweeting had worried them long before the final blow. Her own son had hidden her password at one point, trying to keep her offline, fearing something like this would happen. Sarah, however, kept her reaction calm. She admitted she was heartbroken. The original show fell apart the way it did, and she said she would always care about Roseanne, that no matter what was said publicly, they were once a family. She didn't take the blame. She didn't feed the drama, she simply stepped into the next phase. The Conners, the new series ABC ordered, which included the entire cast except Roseanne. That's where Sarah stayed, taking on more responsibility than ever, acting, producing, and rebuilding the universe of a show that had raised her. In the end, The Conners became its own entity, running all the way until 2025. Proving Sarah's resilience and her ability to carry forward a legacy while navigating one of the most publicized showbiz storms in recent memory. Yet, even as she found her footing there, Sarah faced another defining moment in her career, the kind that came with personal stakes no one else could feel. As the creator and driving force behind the talk, she had poured years into building a show that reflected her voice and vision. But by 2019, Sarah made a decision that left everyone in shock. The talk fallout. Sarah Gilbert's exit, and Sharon Osbourne's explosive controversy. In 2019, Sarah Gilbert faced one of the hardest decisions of her career. Sitting across from her co-hosts on The Talk, she announced she was leaving the show she had created and nurtured since its 2010 debut. The moment was raw and unfiltered. Sharon Osbourne, usually the one holding the room together, broke down in tears, and Gilbert moved across the table to comfort her. It was a glimpse of real life spilling onto daytime TV, people grappling with the limits of their time, energy, and heart. Gilbert had built the show from the ground up. As both host and executive producer, she carried enormous responsibility. By 2019, however, the balancing act between work and family had become unsustainable. Between filming The Conners, producing The Talk, and raising 3 children, 4-year-old Rhodes with songwriter Linda Perry, and Levi, 14, and Sawyer, 11, from a previous relationship, she realized she could no longer do it all. She told her co-hosts she loved the show deeply and had cherished every moment. But life was out of balance. She admitted that even small milestones, like completing her youngest son's baby book, had slipped through the cracks. She reassured them she would remain part of the Talk family, guest hosting when she could, and that her departure was not a goodbye, but a step toward regaining control of her life. Her co-hosts, visibly moved, told her that her spirit would always remain at the table. CBS confirmed that Gilbert would always be welcome back and praised her vision and the passion she brought to the show. Julie Chen, another original host, had left the show a year earlier in 2018, following her husband and CBS CEO Leslie Moonves's resignation amid sexual misconduct allegations. Gilbert's exit left a void, but the drama surrounding The Talk was far from over. The show had long walked a tightrope, balancing celebrity clashes, live audiences, and social media scrutiny. In March 2021, a heated exchange between Osbourne and Sheryl Underwood over Osbourne's defense of Piers Morgan ignited a firestorm. Morgan, who had harshly criticized Meghan Markle, quit his morning show after claiming Markle fabricated a suicide attempt and had betrayed the monarchy by speaking to Oprah. Osbourne, a longtime friend of Morgan, defended him on air, prompting Underwood to call out her stance as problematic and dismissive of racism. The confrontation was tense and emotional. Osbourne argued that defending a friend did not make her racist, while Underwood explained that dismissing Markle's experiences reflected a pattern of harm Black women face. CBS responded by placing the show on hiatus to review the incident. Sources revealed that Osbourne had been blindsided, given only minutes to respond, and later described the experience as feeling like a firing squad. The tension on set was palpable, insiders said. Osbourne eventually issued a public apology, acknowledging she had panicked and reacted defensively, and promising to continue learning and listening. Morgan, however, accused the show of pressuring Osbourne into the apology. Old grievances resurfaced during the fallout. Holly Robinson Peete, a Season 1 co-host, tweeted that Osbourne had once called her too ghetto to be on the show. Leah Remini, another early co-host, disputed some of the claims but confirmed that offensive remarks had occurred. Emails and insider accounts suggested that Osbourne had used slurs against former co-hosts, sometimes openly in front of them, with few consequences. Osbourne's publicist described the resurfaced allegations as distorted, emphasizing her years of professionalism and kindness. Former co-host Marie Osmond also cited mistreatment from Osbourne as a factor in her decision to leave. While CBS denied any threats or ultimatums, the shifting dynamics and tensions on the show were clear. For Gilbert, leaving had been about regaining balance and prioritizing her family. For Osbourne, the drama became unavoidable, exposing how quickly a live television environment can spiral. Gilbert walked away to protect her personal life and sanity, while Osbourne faced the consequences of her words under the scrutiny of millions. As of the show's final season, the panel included Sheryl Underwood, Amanda Klutz, Natalie Morales, Jerry O'Connell, and Akbar Gbajabiamila. The Talk was officially canceled after 15 seasons, with the final episode airing on December 20, 2024. Looking back, The Talk was more than a show. It was a collision of ambition, loyalty, conflict, and heartbreak, with the lives of its hosts unfolding in real time before the cameras. Gilbert's departure reminded viewers that even creators of these worlds are human. Osborne's controversies showed how fragile those worlds can be when tensions simmer just beneath the surface. Daytime television may appear light and airy, but behind the cameras, real people deal with real pressures, and sometimes there are no easy resolutions. And with one era closing, another quietly came into focus. By 2025, Sarah Gilbert found herself standing at the edge of both her professional and personal life, watching as the world she had built, the iconic Roseanne universe, the Conners, and The Talk, all reached their conclusions. What remained was the life she had carved out for herself beyond the cameras, and the quiet reality of what it meant to step away from the spotlight. How Sarah Gilbert lives now is just sad. There was a time when Sarah Gilbert felt like she had it all, or at least the kind of life most people would envy. A household name from Roseanne, a familiar presence in millions of living rooms, a mother, a wife, a rising executive in television. But somewhere along the way, life slowed her down, not in the way of reflection or peace, but in a way that made the world she had built start to feel distant, almost unreachable. Earlier this year, news quietly hit that the Conners, the Roseanne spin-off that had carried her into yet another generation, was wrapping its 7-season run. April 23rd marked its series finale, and with it came a quiet realization for those who loved the show, and for Gilbert herself, that an era was ending. She had played Darlene Conner for more than 3 decades. She had grown up in that role, matured in it, and navigated her own life through it. Yet, as she reflected on the finale, there was a weight in her words that could not be ignored. In conversation with people, Gilbert said the experience was like being part of a family, one stitched together not just by scripts, but by shared days, shared laughter, and shared exhaustion. She spoke of the crew, the writers, the cast, and people who had become constant in a world defined by chaos. It feels like family, and because we did it for so many years, it is sort of deep in our soul, she admitted. But underneath that warmth, there was an ache, a recognition that something beloved was ending, and that she was facing a new chapter with less certainty than before. The show itself had always aimed to do more than entertain. It was about the American family struggling to get by, the messy, imperfect, recognizable life that so few shows were willing to portray. Gilbert often noted the brilliance of the writing, how it tackled heavy subjects with humor and tenderness, letting audiences both laugh and feel at home. But as the cameras stopped rolling, as the scripts went silent, she was left holding not just memories, but the hollow spaces between them. Her co-stars, Lacey Goranson and Laurie Metcalf, shared similar disbelief. Goranson, who played Becky, refused to accept the ending. She wanted to hold on to the people she had worked with, to keep them close, and to carry the laughter forward in some form. Metcalf, ever pragmatic, imagined new collaborations, but even she admitted that the magic of the Conners, of being part of that story, was irreplaceable. For Gilbert, life outside of the show had not slowed. She launched a new production company, Sarah plus Tom, alongside mentor Tom Werner, and signed onto a recurring role on Netflix's Atypical. Ambition did not fade, it grew. Yet, at the same time, other parts of her life were quietly unraveling. Her Los Angeles home, a 6-bedroom, 7-bathroom estate in Hancock Park, went on the market in April for $10.9 million. A house bought in 2016 for $6.8 million during a marriage that would not last. Perched above the Wilshire Country Club with sweeping views of the Hollywood Hills, the nearly 6,400 square foot, 3-level home seemed perfect on paper. Vaulted ceilings allowed sunlight to spill into every corner. A swimmer's pool nestled in lush foliage, and the property rested on 1/3 of an acre overlooking the golf course. The primary suite boasted a massive soaking tub and a private balcony overlooking the backyard pool and spa. The kitchen included a walk-in pantry with a rolling ladder to reach the high shelves, and the home also offered an office, a gym, and a media room. But a house, even one like this, cannot fix the isolation or the ache of a life that feels like it is moving away from you faster than you can keep up. And then there was the work that never quite reached its potential. Gilbert reflected on her time as Dr. Leslie Winkle in The Big Bang Theory, a role that never fully bloomed. She had wanted more episodes, more development, and even the chance to star in the show's planned spin-off. Yet the writers hit walls. The character left stories unfinished, and she was left with fleeting cameos and memories of what could have been. There was excitement in the work, sure, but also a quiet frustration. The reminder that sometimes even talent and opportunity are not enough to bend the trajectory of a story. Gilbert's words on the podcast were candid. She would have done more if given the chance, but the character's quick exits left no room for depth. The part was transient, a series of sparks that flared and faded, leaving her wishing for more. Even as she laughed about dropping by Sheldon's 200th birthday episode to call him a dumbass, the undercurrent was clear. There was a longing for a fuller canvas, for recognition beyond brief moments. All of this paints a picture that is quietly heartbreaking. Sarah Gilbert lives in a world that many would envy: money, recognition, professional achievement. But her life, as it exists now, is scattered. The shows she loved are ending. Homes she inhabited are being sold. Roles that could have defined her legacy never fully materialized. She carries the weight of ambition, the ache of impermanence, and the pull of past relationships and fading certainties. Even her family life, the thing that often grounds people, reflects this quiet struggle. She is a mother to 3 children, balancing the needs of a 4-year-old with the responsibilities of teens, all while navigating her career. There is no villain here, no public scandal defining her days, just the slow accumulation of compromises, decisions, and departures that have left a life rich in accomplishments but thin in fulfillment. And so, as Sarah Gilbert moves forward, it is with both the resilience of someone who has faced the spotlight and the solitude of someone who has outgrown parts of it. She will continue to work, continue to create, and continue to show up, because that is what she knows. But the rhythm of her life is quieter now, tinged with an unspoken sadness, a reflection of what happens when a career built in public collides with the private human need for connection, stability, and continuity. Looking at Gilbert now, one sees a woman still brilliant, still capable, and still admired. But there is also a jarring reality. The life she leads, as glamorous or successful as it may appear on the surface, carries an undercurrent of loneliness, unmet expectations, and small aching losses. Homes are sold, shows end, characters disappear. Through it all, she remains present, composed, and professional, but undeniably, quietly sad. What do you think about Sarah Gilbert? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.